and now right here in the USA. Watch us via Roku on your smart TV. Submit your own content to 1530entertainmentllc@gmail.com. Download the Millennium TV app from the App Store to stream our shows anywhere, anytime. Millennium TV.
Authorities are investigating after a woman was found dead inside a home. Welcome to Millennium News 24/7, daily and local news update. I'm with you, Cameron Martin. Watching news headlines? Now details around this time. Authorities are investigating after a woman was found dead inside a home in northwest Harris County. On Thursday, deputies conducted a welfare check at the home in the 18,000 block on Clayton Bluff Lane. At the scene, deputies said they found a woman dead inside the home. While the circumstances surrounding the woman's death are still unclear, authorities say that she had signs of trauma. Sergeant Ben Beal with the Homicide Division of Harris County Sheriff's Office said that they were called around 3:25 p.m. for a welfare check by the victim's husband. According to the victim's husband, he was contacted by his wife. She told him that there was somebody walking around outside the house. This wasn't the first time, as he said that 2 weeks ago someone came into their backyard. When deputies arrived, they found their home secured. As they're about to leave, the husband arrived and let them inside, where the woman was found dead on the floor. At this point, investigators said that there does not appear to be any sign of forceful entry into the home. According to Sergeant Beal, there has been a history of previous calls to this address. The most recent one was from 2 weeks ago, when the husband reported a suspicious person in their backyard. Deputies remain tight-lipped about potential suspects, but they did say they do not believe a suspect is at large. A St. Louis power couple has moved to the Atlanta area to expand their business, were found dead in what investigators believe was a murder-suicide. According to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, Sandy Springs Police Sergeant Salvador Ortega said before 9 p.m. on November 6, Kiana Burns, age 44, shot and killed her husband, 46-year-old Ronell Burns, before shooting herself. The Christian Post said the couple, who were together, had 8 children from previous relationships, were once social media celebrities for inspiring entrepreneurship and For His Glory Ministries. Kiana owned Critique Designs Beauty and Barber Salon, which is based in their hometown of St. Louis. Their tragic deaths were first reported by VOP News St. Louis, independent St. Louis news outlet, according to the Post. The couple's teenage daughter reported a domestic violence incident to the police on the night of the incident, VOP reported. She called the police anyway from the home. When officers arrived, neighbors said they heard gunshots coming from the Burns home. The police entered and found the couple dead. Kiana said in an October Facebook Live that she was struggling to adjust to life in Georgia without an extended family and friend to help her with things like watching their children. She also hinted at struggling with her mental health. Quote, "Stay prayed up," Kiana tells her Facebook followers, adding that it was not a smooth transition to Georgia. Quote, "My husband right now is at a retreat. I stayed back because we have our children here," she said. "However, I just hopped on here because you have to prepare for life changes, no matter what it is taking place. I'm trying to encourage somebody because things in your life can change for the good or the bad overnight, literally. And if you do not feel like you're a strong enough individual, some things may take you out," end quote. Police now requires racially motivated incidents to be investigated with the same protocols as bullying. The policy now falls in line with state law that adds specific language on race to existing anti-bullying laws. In the policy, the district encourages all employees, students, and parents to take appropriate action by reporting it to school leaders. They say it does not matter if it happens in person, online, or any other setting. But the decision did not come smoothly. There were outbursts throughout most of the meeting. Students were escorted out after accusing adults, critics of the policy, of bullying them in the meeting. "Remove the students," shouted one of the attendees. "Students, if you all have been harassed, please exit through the side door. Please report to the security officers if you have been harassed," said CCSD board member Linda P. Cavos. "Students in the room told me that they were happy the policy was passed because they can now hold people and faculty members accountable. While one parent says he might remove his children from the district if the policy becomes, quote, too much, the trustees did not mention what punishment will be if a student or faculty member violates the policy." Samantha Keela's beliefs about the COVID-19 vaccine cost the 29-year-old her dream job of being a state trooper. She was relieved of her duties Thursday after she refused to get a shot, defying the state mandates. Keela's mother, Cheryl, told NBC 10 Boston that her daughter would not get the vaccine because of religious reasons. She applied for an exemption, but was denied. "My daughter still wants to do this. She's meant to do it. We are a police family," Cheryl Keela said. The trooper handed her keys over to her cruiser, her weapon, and her badge. It was an emotional time because she was given the same badge as her father, Vincent Sheila, who was killed in the line of duty in 2005. Her mother, who is vaccinated, said she tried to convince her daughter to get the shot instead of losing her job, but she respects her decision. It's her choice. It's their choice. It's their body. They should be able to wear the mask and get tested instead, Cheryl Keela said. Despite lawsuits and grievances from the union, Governor Charlie Baker's administration is not budging on policy. It is a safety issue to assume it's okay and appropriate for public officials who deal with the public not to be vaccinated, Baker said when asked about the mandate back in September. Samantha Keela is one of 100 troops who remain unvaccinated. They are slowly being notified and will face suspensions in a series of hearings. A short break from the daily English news, Millennium News 24/7. Stay tuned.
Millennium TV, bridging communities worldwide. We broadcast diverse international content from Europe, Asia, Africa, and now right here in the USA. Watch us via Roku on your smart TV. Submit your own content to 1530entertainmentllc@gmail.com. Download the Millennium TV app from the App Store to stream our shows anywhere, anytime. Millennium TV.
Welcome to Millennium News 24/7 daily and local news update. John Hagee's Cornerstone Church in San Antonio has issued a policy for hosting an extremist rally. The Reawaken American tour appeared in San Antonio at the church, which was roundly criticized by many religious leaders after a video showed the crowd chanting, "Let's go Brandon," a euphemism for an insult against President Joe Biden. After an attempt to distance themselves from the event, another video surfaced of Pastor Matt Hagee, John Hagee's son, welcoming the crowd and congratulating them for attending. The church offered a later statement in which the younger Hagee apologized for his involvement and asked for forgiveness. The statement said that the group was not properly vetted and stated that, quote, "In their future, Cornerstone Church will ensure that the organizations using their facilities are an appropriate reflection of their mission and vision." The conference took place on November 11th to 13th, and speakers included former National Security Advisor Mike Flynn, Trump policy consultant Roger Stone, and MyPillow CEO Mike Lindell. All three are well-known conspiracy theorists. They rallied against the COVID-19 vaccine mandate and election fraud, and Flynn was caught on video calling for, quote, "one religion" in the United States. Critics, including the religious leaders, have condemned the organizers for holding the political event in a religious setting. Oklahoma pastor Jeremy Coleman shared his thoughts on TikTok. Quote, "Look, if you're going to be a white nationalist cult rally, just say you're going to be a a bigoted political rally. Just say that. But don't call yourself a church. Churches are meant to be places of unconditional love for your neighbor. That means your Republican neighbor, your Democrat neighbor, your gay neighbor, your straight neighbor, your black neighbor, your white neighbor, your American neighbor, your immigrant neighbor, Coleman said. It's meant to be a place where everybody can come together in unity, in love, and worship Jesus. So you can miss me with that bull crap because that's a white nationalist cult rally. We need to start paying taxes. Jenny Gutierrez, a beloved daughter, cousin, friend, and co-worker, but most importantly, she was a devout mother to her young children. None of them could imagine her life gone so soon, but now that's the reality. About a month and a half ago, when she contracted COVID, along with her 4 children, said Christine Winter, the mother of Jenny Gutierrez. Gutierrez tested positive for COVID-19 on October 16th. Her children recovered, but Gutierrez's health worsened. It wasn't a week later that she asked her son to take her to the hospital because she could not breathe, said Whitener. She stayed on a ventilator, unable to breathe on her own or verbally communicate with her family. Quote, "We thought she was going to be better, but," said Whitener, after spending more than 3 weeks in the hospital fighting for her life, Gutierrez passed away on Tuesday, November 9th, at the age of 39. Gutierrez leaves behind 4 children, all between the ages of 7 and 21. They have looked to their mother for everything. Whether it's an enormous financial burden for their children, says believes, they're young. They don't have any source of income. Gutierrez worked at a Circle K convenience store on the corner of Fred Waring and Clinton Street. She was with the company for 10 years and worked as a store manager for 5 years, often picking up extra nights and weekend shifts to make ends meet. She always had the best happy-go-lucky attitude, very loving. She loved her kids, said Villeneuve. She did everything for her children. A woman riding a vehicle was shot dead along the westward approach to the Bay Bridge Toll Plaza. On Thursday morning, the California Highway Patrol said dispatchers received a call about 9:12 a.m. of a freeway shooting on Interstate Highway 80 in Oakland. The woman, a man, and 2 juveniles were traveling in a Buick Rendezvous SUV just east of West Grand Avenue when their vehicle was struck by gunfire. The woman was seated right in the right front passenger seat of the SUV, where she was hit by the gunfire and died of her injuries, said the CHP. The male driver and both juveniles were uninjured. The vehicle was stopped in the left side exit lane westbound of the I-80 toll plaza parking lot. The CHP closed for the 4 left lanes westbound of the I-80 between the West Grand Ave and the 1888 overcrossing for several hours to search for evidence. A coroner's office van arrived around 11:45 a.m. to retrieve the woman's body. The victim identified was not available as of 4:30 p.m. CHP officers and Alameda County Coroner's Office personnel are seen next to the minivan that appears to have a fatal shooting victim inside. November 18th, 2021, all lanes have since reopened. Earlier, traffic was slowly backed up on the I-80, all the way down to Buchanan Street in Albany. I-50 and I-58, I-580 was backed up to the Highway 24 and 980 interchange. A closed portion of the westbound Interstate Highway 80 approached the Bay Bridge Toll Plaza, view looking east, November 18th, 2021. The CHP said detectives were actively investigating for the shooting and asked anyone with pertinent information or who witnessed the shooting to call 707-917-4491. Former New York Jets star running back Zach Stacy was fired as a youth ambassador hours after TMZ published a video that allegedly showed him brutally beating his ex-girlfriend in front of their child. WRKN reported. The woman who was thrown against the TV and struck. The violent video shared the graphic footage with WFLA. The station isn't identifying her by name for privacy reasons. According to TMZ, the woman has filed an order of protection against Stacy, but it's unclear if the restraining order was granted. In the application, she said she was hospitalized with bumps and bruises and the possible cuts to the head. Quote, he punched me several times in the head. I begged him to stop because the baby was on the couch just a few feet from where he punched me, The woman was quoted saying, "I fear for my life and my children's lives." Hours later, WESH2 News confirmed that the police in Oakland, Florida, who were searching for Stacy, believed to have fled the state and urged to turn himself in. Stacy played college football at Vanderbilt before being drafted by the Rams and playing 2 seasons with them. He joined the Jets in 2015 but retired 2 years later due to injuries. He briefly joined the CFL Saskatchewan Rough Riders and also played for the Alliance of American Football's Memphis Express. Watch ride-alongs on San Diego's new trolley line extension, the Trans-Perfect Music Bowl. A college football bowl played in Nashville said it was remove Stacy as its youth ambassador for the upcoming game. Based on the video and domestic violence report regarding Zach Stacy, the Trans-Perfect Music City Bowl has terminated the relationship with Zach Stacy effective immediately, the organization said in the release. A short break from the daily English news, Millennium News 24/7.
Millennium TV, bridging communities worldwide. We broadcast diverse international content from Europe, Asia, Africa, and now right here in the USA. Watch us via Roku on your smart TV. Submit your own content to 1530entertainmentllc@gmail.com. Download the Millennium TV app from the App Store to stream our shows anywhere, anytime. Millennium TV.
Welcome to Millennium News 24/7 daily and local news updates. Reviving a three-way North American symmetry after a 5-year break, President Joe Biden on Thursday joined the leaders of Canada and Mexico to declare their nations can work together and prove, quote, democracies can deliver, even as they sort out their differences on key issues. But as Biden, along with Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Mexican President Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador spoke their mutual respect, the three leaders have found themselves dealing with fresh strains on the trade, immigration, climate change, and other matters. We can meet all the changes if we take the time to speak to one another by working together, said Biden, who hosted the North American neighbors for what has been a near annual tradition in the decade before President Donald Trump came into office. It was a day full on diplomacy that required careful choreography as Trudeau and Lopez Obrador each met separately with Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris before gathering for a new three-way conversation in the East Room that featured a language mix of English, French, and Spanish. The leaders issued a post-summit statement saying that they agreed to collaborate on addressing migration, climate change, and the coronavirus pandemic, without specifying how they would resolve their differences. As they played up the closeness of the alliance, points of tension were also clear. They included the differences between Washington and Ottawa over proposed tax incentives that would benefit the U.S. electric car auto manufacturers, frustrations from Lopez Obrador that said that the U.S. isn't moving to issue any more temporary work visas, even as American business complained that they are suffering from worker shortages, and a disappointment by the U.S. and Canada that Mexico is not moving faster to address climate change. U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken on Friday called on an African nation to heed warnings possessed by crisis in Ethiopia and Sudan, taken seriously by popular demand for better governance and enact reforms. In a speech outlining the Biden administration policies towards the continent, Blinken said growing extremism, increasing authoritarianism, and exploding corruption in Africa are imperiling democracy, human rights, and the future of a massive proportion from the world's population. Blinken delivered the messages in Nigeria's capital of Abuja a day after telling Nigerian leaders and officials in Kenya the day before that the U.S. is looking to them for results, including setting examples for their Ethiopian and Sudanese counterparts. Authoritarianism is on the rise around the world, he said. In an address at the Abuja-based headquarters of the Economic Community West African States regional bloc, he cited threats of free speech and freedom of assembly that have been on the rise, that civilian governments in Africa have been toppled at least 4 times this year. Meanwhile, governments are becoming less transparent, Blinken said. We see this happening across Africa. Leaders ignoring term limits, rigging or postponing elections, exploiting social grievances to gain and maintain power, arresting opposition figures, cracking down on the media, and allowing security services to enforce pandemic restrictions brutally. Blinken said the Biden administration is awaiting the findings of the recent conclude probe into the allegations of brutality by the Nigerian police, and as it seeks Abuja's leadership more broadly in troubled spots like Ethiopia and Sudan. Threats posed by violent extremists, criminals, and internal armed conflicts are very real. So is their potential to destabilize nations and regions, undermine development, and ignite humanitarian disasters, he said. Part of the answer is effectiveness and professional security forces with local law enforcement that can protect the citizens while respecting human rights. Nigerian security forces have been long accused of violating human rights in their operations, with personnel involved often escaping injustice. In October 2020, the Army opened fire at a demonstration in the country's economic hub where hundreds of people were protesting against police brutality, killing 11 people and injuring many others, according to the government-backed panel. Blinken said the U.S. is looking forward to seek the full results of the investigation and will make a decision on arms sales to Nigeria based in part on the findings and whether those are responsible and are held accountable. In a major reversal, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi announced Friday that he would repeal the controversial agricultural laws that sparked a year-long protest from tens of thousands of farmers and pose a significant challenge to his administration. Farmers who form India's most influential voting blocs have camped out the outskirts of the capital since November of last year to demand withdrawals of the law, which they feared would drastically reduce their incomes. Modi's surprise decision in a televised national address came ahead of early elections next year in key states like Uttar Pradesh and Punjab that are significant agricultural producers and where his Bharatiya Janata Party is eager to shore up its support. Experts say it was too early to say if it would work. The Prime Minister urged protesters to return home, but when farmers have said that they will stay put until the laws are gone, a protest will begin in December when Parliament sits for its winter session. While apologizing for the nation, I want to say with a sincere and pure heart that maybe something was lacking in our effort, and we cannot explain the truth to let some of our farmer brothers, Modi said in an address. He added, let us make a fresh start. The move represented a rare climb down from the 71-year-old leader who has stood firm in the face of fierce criticism over other steps that his government took, such as abruptly banning high denomination currency notes and revoking Muslim majorities Kashmir's semi-autonomous powers. He also backed citizenship laws that excluded Muslim immigrants, even in the face of sometimes violent protests. But farmers are a particularly influential voting bloc in India, both for their sheer numbers, but also because they are often romanticized as the heart and soul of the nation. These are important, especially important to Modi's base, and make up a substantial proportion of the population in some states that his party rules. Modi has long defended the laws, which were passed in September of last year, as necessary to modernize India's agricultural sector. But when farmers feared that they would end up in a system under which government guaranteed prices for certain essential crops, first introduced in the 1960s to help shore up food reserves and prevent shortages. While the government said it would be willing to pledge the guarantee prices would continue, farmers wanted the legislation to saying such prices were their legal rights. They contended without guarantees, they would be at the mercy of the markets, that would spell disaster, especially for more than two-thirds of them who owned in less 1 hectare of land. Liberator of Nelson Mandela or leader of racist murders. South Africa is engrossed in a debate over the legacy of the apartheid last president, F.W. de Klerk, who died last week at age 85 and is to be buried Sunday. The controversy following de Klerk's comes to the grave comes after 27 years of the official end to the brutal regime that oppressed the country's black majority for generations. Soaking the Fuhrer is a video that he released posthumously in which he said he was sorry. I, without qualification, apologize for the pain and hurt of the indigeneity and damage that the apartheid have done to the black, brown, Indians in South Africa, said de Klerk, and a person emancipated by the mesothelioma cancer, who nonetheless chose his words carefully. Some say that South Africans were moved by de Klerk's final appearance, but many were critical, saying that he avoided acknowledging that the apartheid was a crime against humanity in which he was a complicit. The last series of half-baked apologies, Reverend Michael Lapsley told the Associated Press, quote, "It's a good thing he apologized for the pain and hurt, but there's no reckoning. There's no accountability. There's no accepting of responsibility for what has happened under his watch." An angelic priest and anti-apartheid activist, Lapsley was hit with a parcel bomb that blew off his hands and blinded him in one eye in 1990. Months after de Klerk freed Nelson Mandela and began negotiations that eventually dismantled the apartheid. De Klerk's rule was one of the most violent periods of our history, Lapsley said. As the chairman of the State Security Council, de Klerk was present at meetings where violence against anti-apartheid leaders was ordered, right up to the 1994 elections that brought power to Mandela and his party, the African National Congress. According to Lapsley and others who have dealt with studied minutes of the council's meetings, he hopes that de Klerk's death, quote, will lead to be a lot of soul searching by us as a nation and what kind of nation we want to be. We have a deal with the psychological, emotional, and spiritual issues in which we are part of the grim legacy of the apartheid. Lapsley, who founded the Institute for the Healing Memories to help mend the wounds of the apartheid, said the other problems that de Klerk contributed to its economic inequality. Apartheid, like slavery before, was always a profit, Lapsley said. Apartheid was always political oppression and economic exploitation. We had slayed one monster, but we leave another one very much intact. A short break from the daily English news with Millennium 24/7. Stay tuned.
Millennium TV, bridging communities worldwide. We broadcast diverse international content from Europe, Asia, Africa, and now right here in the USA. Watch us via Roku on your smart TV. Submit your own content to 1530entertainmentllc@gmail.com. Download the Millennium TV app from the App Store to stream our shows anywhere, anytime. Millennium TV.
Welcome to Millennium News 24/7 Daily Local News Update. Hungary's oppositional leader wants to restore his country's frayed ties with the West and also a message for American fans of right-wing Prime Minister Viktor Orban. Quote, let me state very strongly for all Americans that want to be a part of Putin's fan club doesn't make you a conservative, said Peter Marquise, a self-described conservative Christian running against Orban in next year's election. In an interview with the Associated Press, Orban is betraying Europe. Orban is betraying NATO. Orban is betraying the United States, he said. Marquise, the 49-year-old mayor of the small city of Honwy-Meshavi, is a leading and diverse coalition of 6 oppositional parties aiming to defeat Hungary's hard-line leader in his ruling of the Fidesz party in parliamentary elections scheduled for April. If elected, Marquise says that he will reverse the closer ties that Orban has pursued with autocrats in Russia and China and improve his relations with the European Union as well and other Western allies. I still stand for Western values, and we cannot accept a corrupt thug who betrays the Western values, who is now a servant of communist China and Russia, he said. Governing Hungary is with 2/3 majority in parliament since 2010. The right-wing populist Orban and his anti-immigration party have dominated the fracture of opposition in all subsequent elections and cemented their power through change and to election laws, slacking institutions with loyalists dominating large portions of Hungary's media, while Orban's critics in Europe have warned an alarming erosion of democracy in Hungary as its relationship with the European Union has frayed. Some of his policies, like the staunch rejection of refugees and a generous financial support to families with children, have attracted glowing praise from the right-wing American commentators. Fox News host Tucker Carlson broadcasted from Budapest for a week this summer and praised Orban's migration policy and rejection of the European Union's liberal mainstream. Rod Dreher, a senior editor for the U.S. publication, The American Conservative, spent several months in Budapest this year on a fellowship financed by a right-wing think tank close to Orban's government. But Marquise, a devout Catholic with 7 children and former Fidesz voter himself, says that despite Orban's proclamations of building an illiberal Christian democracy in the Central European country, he considers the leader neither a Christian nor a conservative, nor even a Democrat. Real conservatives consider Christianity to be something very much opposite of Orban's policies, he says. At a busy market in a poor township outside of Harare this week, Naish Nodu kept his mask in his pocket as hundreds of people, mostly unmasked, jostled to buy and sell fruit, vegetable displayed on a wooden table and plastic sheet. As much as Zimbabwe, here the coronavirus is being relegated quickly to the past, and as political rallies, concerts, and home gatherings have returned, COVID-19 is gone. When was the last time you heard someone say they have died of COVID-19? Ndodu said. The mask is to protect my pocket, he said. The police demand bribes, so if I lose my money, I lose my money if I don't move around my mask. Earlier this week, Zimbabwe recorded just 33 new cases and 0 deaths of COVID-19. In line with a recent fall in disease across the continent, where the World Health Organization data shows that infections have been dropping since July. When the coronavirus first emerged last year, health officials feared the pandemic would sweep across Africa, killing millions. Although it's unclear what COVID-19's ultimate toll will be, that catastrophic scenario has yet to be materialized in Zimbabwe or much of the continent. Scientists emphasize that obtaining accurate COVID-19 data, particularly in African countries with patchy surveillance, is extremely difficult, and warned that declining COVID-19 trends can easily be reversed. But there is something mysterious going on in Africa, puzzling scientists, said Wafa El Sader, chair of the global health at the Columbia University. Africa does not have the vaccine and the resources to fight COVID-19 that they say that they have in Europe and the United States, but somehow they're doing better, she said. Fewer than 6% of people in Africa are vaccinated. For months, the World Health Organization has described Africa as one of the least affected regions in the world. in its weekly pandemic reports. Some researchers say the continent's younger population, the average age is 20 versus about 23 in Western Europe. In addition to having their lower rates of urbanized and tendencies to spend time outdoors, many have spotted it is more lethal effects in the virus so far. Several studies are probing whether there might be other explanations, including genetic reasons or exposure to other diseases. Authorities in India-controlled Kashmir on Thursday ordered an investigation into a police raid that killed 4 people and later exhumed 2 bodies and returned them to the families who claimed Indian troops as their relatives as human shields and executed them in cold blood. Police said earlier that the 2 civilians died in crossfire when the government forced a Monday attack suspected rebels in Srinagar, the divided region's main city. Witnesses and families of the civilians and one suspect rebel have denied police versions of the event, saying that they were deliberately killed by Indian troops while being used as humans amid a standoff. Police said the rebels, including Pakistani citizens, but offered no evidence. They also described one of them as a, quote, overgrown worker in terms of Indian authorities used for rebel synthesizers and their civilian support. Authorities later secretly buried all the victims in a remote northwest village. Following the widespread public outrage, the bodies of traitors Muhammad Alfar Bats and Mukhtar Ahmed, a dental surgeon and real estate dealer, were exhumed late Thursday in presence of government officials and a team of doctors. Family members said the authorities asked them to bury the 2 in presence of only close relatives and immediate neighbors, fearing that the funerals could turn them into anti-Indian protests. The exhumation of bodies came after the police detained and later released over a dozen relatives of the slain civilians during a day-long sit-in late Wednesday in Srinagar. The families have been demanding the authorities to return the bodies so they could be buried in local graveyards. Manoja Singh, New Delhi's top administrator in the region, said the investigation into the killings will be led by a senior civilian officer, and the government will take suitable action as soon as the report is submitted in a time-bound manner. He added that his administration, quote, will ensure there is no injustice. Kashmir's separatists called for a shutdown of business and public transportation on Friday in the region to protest the killings. Over the last 2 years, authorities have buried bodies of hundreds of suspected rebels and their alleged associates, including civilians, in unmarked graves in remote areas, denying their families proper funerals. Hundreds of Iraqis returned home Thursday from Belarus after abandoning their hopes of reaching the European Union. Repatriation that came after the tensions in Poland's eastern border, where thousands of migrants became stuck in a cold and soggy forest. Many others in Belarus have moved into a heated warehouse not far from the border, emptying out a makeshift camp. Belarusian state-run media reported, but the Polish Defense Ministry posted a video showing a few hundred people in their tents still near an official crossing point. It was not clear if the 2 countries were talking about 2 different sites on their border, but it was typical during the dueling narratives that have marked the crisis, in which both Belarus and Poland have sought to portray themselves in a positive light while depicting the other as the unfeeling and irresponsible towards the migrants. Quote, we were hostages, the victims stuck between the Belarus and European Union said. A young Iraqi returning in a black hood after his flight arrived in Baghdad. Belarus police are the same like in Daesh, he said, referring to the brutal militants from the Islamic group that rampaged Iraq 7 years. He then walked away. Ali Kadem, who was returning home from Barisal, said he wanted to go to Europe because Iraq, there was no jobs and the situation was very bad recently. He said he reached a deal with the smugglers to get him into Belarus-Poland border zone, where the Belarusian border guard took his passport and cell phone and prevented him from leaving the forest. For 3 days, he had no food, water, or internet service, he said. I was living on what I found on ground. and I mean to have had lived three dates in a whole day. Kadim said, of the 430 people who flew in the Minsk, 390 got off in the Erlib International Airport in Iraqi's northern Kurdistan region before flights continued to Baghdad, said Jihad al-Diwan, head of media relations for Iraq's Civil Aviation Authority. About 30 who were registered for the flight had problems with their documents and did not board, according to Iraqi officials, who organized the return. One woman arriving in Erlib carried a bassinet with a baby. Most stole wore heavy winter coats from their time in Belarus, despite the warm weather in Iraq. Another woman collapsed, apparently fainting. Tensions flared up at the Poland-Belarus border in recent days, with about 2,000 people trapped between the forces of the two countries. On Tuesday, some of the migrants have thrown stones at the Polish troops who responded with tear gas and water cannons. The UN Refugee Agency says about half the migrants at the border were women and children. At least 12 people have died in the area in recent weeks from the harsh conditions of the border zone, including a 1-year-old whose death was reported on Thursday by a Polish humanitarian organization. That was daily local news update of the Millennium News 24/7. Log in to get the latest news on all our social media networking sites: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. TikTok is Millennium News 24. Also, our YouTube channel is News Channel M24. Viewers, now on both network broadcasting, Android and iOS devices, Apple TV, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, also all smart TV platforms. Please enjoy our entertainment and latest news and views. Our Millennium TV app, Millennium TV US and USA Android, Millennium News Google, www.millenniumtv24.com. Stay with Millennium News 24. Thank you.